And here they are: spirituality, education, and action. So, creation care ministry, to be well organized in the church, it means we have to have these three pillars in mind. We can represent them like this. So, if your church only does spirituality, or only education, or only action, you're not getting the full picture. Okay? So, here's what happened. In 2009, I was hired by the Green Church Project, which later became the Green Churches Network. So I was hired by them, and then I got the chance to meet the first churches in the Montreal region that were actually acting on the environment. And I found something which was really intriguing, is that in the churches where they talked about environment, and the whole project was started by the pastor would preach about the subject at least once a month. And when it was Earth Hour or Earth Day or the day of prayer for creation or Thanksgiving, these were times where the pastor would invite people to come for a special prayer service outside of Sunday and pray specifically for recognizing creation and taking care of it. It was really focused on spirituality. And then I was just blown away by the fact that there wasn't much action happening. I was invited to these churches, and then they would invite me for coffee hour, and there would be styrofoam cups. So it was in the spirituality, but it wasn't trickling down to the other aspects. Okay? Totally other example. In the churches that this project was initiated by very generous engineers that were retired. Okay? And so small projects like ensuring there are recycling bins in every room in the church, or bigger things like geothermal energy. So the church itself, the building, and even the people inside, some of the habits were changing quite dramatically. But then, the Christians themselves were not being converted to an eco-spirituality. It's the building itself that was seeing transformation, but nothing was happening in the community. Nothing was happening beyond the church walls. So I saw churches that were really emphasizing spirituality, other churches that were emphasizing action. And I remember one church where the pastoral associate there, she was involved as an activist for Greenpeace. And so she would bring all of these things. She would invite people to marches. She would invite speakers to talk about climate change and talk about biodiversity loss and talking about the forests in that region that were being destroyed. And everything was on education. And unfortunately, people were saying, yeah, but I come to church and coming to pray and then hearing about these things. But her activities didn't gain much people because, exactly, there was nothing for the spiritual part, which is the main reason why people go to church. And surprisingly, not much was being done for action. I mean, that church was still wasting so much energy with a system with, burning oil to heat the church. And they hadn't thought of another way to heat the church. And so these churches were doing amazing things, but I saw these three different approaches. And these, for me, became three pillars. And one thing, too, that was common to some of these churches, which only emphasize one of the three, is that they kind of like lose steam with time. And then they stop. But when a church does all three of them and try to balance all of that work that's being done in those three pillars, then it can continue for a very long time. Okay? When we nurture people's spirituality towards creation, that makes them more curious and they want to learn. So their minds are open for environmental education. With environmental education, they understand the scope of the crisis with the climate, for example, or they understand the complexities in a forest and why we can't just clear cut it. And so then they're ready for action. And then that action is being done, and that leads to, well, when people feel a sense of accomplishment, well, it can open the way to a deeper spirituality of it, and then it goes around in that cycle. Okay, that's what I've noticed in churches that do all three. There's also another take on this. Okay, this is called the competency framework, and you can Google it and find it. The spirituality part has to do with attitudes and values, and that's actually the motor of actions later on. Okay, so we're nurturing that part. And then there's also knowledge and understanding. That's the education part, where we're trying to do environmental education, help people better understand the complexities of our natural environment. And finally, the skills. That's the action. Learning how to take care of creation and doing something about it. So there you have it. The three pillars of creation care ministry: spirituality, education, and action. And with that, you'll have a sustainable church.